Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. We want to let you know that we have once again been honored with a nomination for the Hockey Podcast of the Year via the Sports Podcasting Awards. And all you need to do to help us is go to ourkidsplayhockey.com and click on the Vote Now button. It asks you a couple questions. You're in and you're out, and you have voted for us for Hockey Podcast of the Year. I want to thank you all for being a wonderful, wonderful audience and helping us get to this stature of hockey podcasting, because we've done it as a family, as the hockey friends and families around the world. Thanks so much and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world. Welcome to episode 5 of Our Kids Play Hockey. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friends Christie Burns and Mike Benelli. And today's show is all about goal setting as parents, goal setting as coaches, goal setting as kids, and why that's so important. Now, I know some of you may be rolling your eyes listening to this stuff like, oh, I've heard this before. I know everything about goal setting. I promise you this will be probably the most informative goal setting podcast or show, if you're watching this, that you've ever had, because it is insanely important how to prioritize it, how to utilize it, and how to make sure you execute it in a way that's going to help everybody involved. Now, this topic was inspired by you, Christy, because of your book, My Kids Play Hockey. Now we're bringing it to Our Kids Play Hockey. But there was a great little short chapter in here about why goal setting is so important. And I wanted to start with you and toss it to you, because one of the things I took away from reading that chapter in the book was that a lot of parents don't have the right maybe priorities, and that's not an insult, but they lose track of maybe what's important before the season even starts. You want to comment on that real quick?
Yeah, and the mindset too is really important here. And think about this. When you step out on the ice before anybody else has touched that ice, what do you see? It's just beautiful, right?
Right.
No rough patches. Everything is smooth. It's a beautiful sheet of ice. We get to start all over again, a fresh start. And that's the way you need to look at this new season. Think of it as a fresh start. All of the season mistakes that you made from the prior season can now be erased, and this is your chance to get it right. And what I like to do is I think about, all right, what are my goals for the season? We're going to dive into that in just a moment. But first, start off with a fresh mentality, just as if you were starting off, a brand new game. All right. So this is your chance to do it right. This year, I'm going to be, helping more with the team tournaments, or this year, I'm going to be better at communicating with the coach. Right. Whatever mistakes you made in the past, here's your chance to start all over again. And sometimes you're starting with a new team, so you really get a fresh start.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is set your goals. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously with hockey, it's a little different, right? Because it seems like the season ends. So it's not, when my son plays baseball, there's a distinct start and a distinct end. And I think you get a chance to reset. Sometimes in hockey, we're thinking about tryouts in December for the next year. And it's such a crazy, and Lee, you'll experience this more as a parent.
I've experienced it as a player.
Right. Well, as a player, it's one thing, right? Because you're part of the noise.
Right.
But I think the ability to know that you can end an experience and then restart it and have that fresh sheet of ice, and you could help direct your kids to that. It really is refreshing too, as a parent, to feel like, just like you tell your kids, brush it off, let's move on. That mentality is so important in this, because the hockey season is so long.
Right. You got to set the reset button.
Well, and I'll say this too. It's no different if you're a sports fan. It's, when the season ends, everybody goes, hey, we're undefeated, right? It's the same mentality if you're a parent,
right.
And I want to dive into this really deep, because I love this topic. It's one of the things I like talking about and enjoy speaking about. And we're going to go over everything from long-term goals to seasonal goals, to even day-to-day goals, because I think it's important to understand that. And I do want to start first with parental goals, because one of the things I was thinking about before the show is that if you're listening to this, you love your kids. You love your kids endlessly, right? Because you're trying to find a way to get better. You're trying to find new ways for them to learn. You're trying to find new ways for yourself to learn. So I think that it's important, if you're a parent, that you sit down as parents, as a couple, or even individually, and understand what are your goals for this season. Because if you don't identify them, you may inadvertently start putting your own goals on your kids, which we know is not something that you want to do. You don't want to pressure your kids through your own goals. You want to make sure you have your own goals. And like Christie said, what are your goals for this season, right? So I want to talk about what are parental goals for the season. Again, I want to be specific. We're not talking about coaching right now or players. We're talking about you as a parent. And what I want to jump into this conversation is, what's really important. Mike just said, some parents are thinking about tryouts. I know how much, from a player standpoint, parents can get lost in the season or the politics of a season. Okay. And I will, as you said, Mike, experience that with my kids, I'm sure. Right. But I always instruct parents, and again, I'm in a position to do this, to take a step back and say, what's really, really important. Right. And from my point of view, and you guys can tell me if you disagree or agree, the most important thing as a parent, I do have a kid playing, is number one, my son and daughter knowing I love you no matter what happens on the ice. If you put the puck in your own net 5 times in a game, while that would be devastating, I'm not going to love you any less. And I think that's a super important message that sometimes parents overlook with their kids. And make no mistake, friends, every psychological expert, every piece of literature shows that this is something that's very important to do. It does not soften your kids. And if anything, it reaffirms your kids that's something they need to hear, because, and this is the second half of this, as much as we love the game, as much as you might want your kids to go to the NHL, and I'll never say that you shouldn't support your kid's dream to do that, you're really trying to make them a productive person that can live on their own after high school, after college, right? So telling my kid, I love you no matter what happens, and making sure that I'm focused, that there's life lessons here that might be even more important than the game. So I'll toss this to Christie first, and then Mike, let's have you follow up on that.
Yeah.
Well, my goals as a parent, always, every year, regardless of what level hockey they're playing, is I want to see my kids work hard, and I want to see them be good teammates.
Right.
So it's really important to communicate that to your kids. Yeah, they may have other goals. Oh, I want to do better at stick handling. I want to work on my shot. I want to be able to, perfect that wrister. That's great. For me, it's pretty basic. Are you working hard? Are you having fun? Are you being good to your teammates? And for me, if I see those goals achieved through the season, I'm feeling pretty good about the season.
Right.
We got to give hockey parents a lot of credit too. For the most part, most hockey parents are really good people. We're hardworking. We make so many sacrifices so that our kids can play. The money, a ton of money. I don't think there's any sport where you can talk about parents being more commendable than hockey parents are. So let's keep that perspective too.
Sure.
It's a lot to be a hockey parent, and it can be stressful. But don't get lost, as you said, very importantly, in the politics, that little minutia. Always step back and look at the picture. What this game is doing for our kids can be just beautiful. And don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think for me, Lee, you overtly, it's sad that overtly we have to remind parents to tell and think about the fact that it has to come out of your mouth. I love watching you play. Right. I love, what you did today. And I know, like, I want to say I think I'm fortunate that, I had a father that I don't ever remember him saying, I love to watch you play, but I knew he loved to watch me play just by his actions and his body language and the way, we didn't have Carvel after wins. We had fun winning or losing. It wasn't attached to success or failure. It was attached to us being in the car together. And I think then as a coach, before I had children, I try to model, even the way I react with the great parents that I got to see as a young coach, a 23, 24, 30-year-old coach, and say, wow, those are the parents I want to model my behavior, because their kids love coming to the rink and they love working with coaches. They're respectful. They're hardworking. Could they be a pain in the butt? Yeah. I mean, they're competitive, but they didn't lose sight of the fact that they knew that everything that was attached to success wasn't about wins and losses. It was about them having fun and wanting to drive themselves to be a better person, ultimately. So I was fortunate that way.
And it goes back to the experience of being a kid and enjoying the game. And, I think, and I've dealt with parents on both sides of this aisle. I think it's just so important that we remember that experience for a young person, even 18 and down. I mean, even a late teenager, it's tough to remember sometimes as a parent, what it was like to be 18 or what it was like to be 7. And what that reaffirmation from your parents, no matter what happened, that, hey, this is supposed to be fun. Let's have fun as a family or as a team. It's so important. And again, with everything going on in the world right now, it can be really easy to lose sight of that. And again, I think most parents are doing this the right way. Not to say that we're the authority on doing it the right way. I think when I look at the game, friends, is this. There are so many life lessons you can learn. And I think that what happens is when you run into a rough patch with your kids, right, as a parent, and this is like I talk about with goal setting, whether that's maybe you feel like your child's being treated unfairly, or maybe they're not being treated unfairly. It's the opposite. The adversity that they face, the obstacles they face will become assets for them becoming better human beings. And I find that, especially as a coach, sometimes parents get so lost in the it's not fair aspect of this. And it may very well be not fair. I'm not trying to say that if you think something's going wrong, you shouldn't speak up. But you have to remind yourself this is an important learning lesson for your child, that life is not fair all the time. And we have to find a solution through that problem. And it may not work. That is an incredibly important life lesson. I can tell you as an employer that, we look for athletes to hire because we know they've been through some form of adversity in the past. So again, I'm just trying to round this out in the sense of a goal setting, that there are higher aspects of this than just the game, but I don't want you to think I don't think the game is important, right? And I hope I'm not sounding like I'm lecturing or anything.
Well, but it's also, and we've hit on this in a number of times. We've had conversations about even development. It's balance. Right. It's that you're going to have weekends where maybe as a parent, you didn't see as much ice time as you thought, but you never hear about the parents saying, wow, you really had my son out there for way too much ice. Right. You never hear that. It's like, well, he deserved to be out there, but did he not deserve to be out there the last weekend? And as a parent, it's just having that balance. Like I love what my wife, like, I think we balance each other well, because I'm pretty crazy with hockey, and she's just like, well, what's so crazy about hockey? It's just, as long as the kids are having fun and they're getting exercise and they're working hard, and I think that's where that balance as parents, that we can feed off each other and making sure that we're doing what's best for our kids. And sometimes you need that perspective of, wow, you're going a little overboard here, or wow, we do need to push a little bit more. And that's all. That's great. I think it's just.
All right. I've got a question for you guys, because both of you are coaches. So I'm going to throw this out there because I've seen this, and I've actually been in this situation myself, where I think my kid deserves more ice time. All right, because I am that parent sometimes. I keep it to myself. I don't share it with others. But I'm thinking that. Sure. Now, let's say she seems to be on the bench more than I think that she should be. And we're talking about younger ages, not the upper. I was just going to say, it's a whole different. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So, do I, as a parent, pull the coach aside at some point and try and ask him questions about that? Because maybe I'm not getting the philosophy of this team. Maybe I'm not seeing it the way the coach sees it. Maybe I'm not seeing my kid the way my coach is seeing the kid. Do I talk to the coach about that? Do I tell my kid, hey, why don't you pull the coach aside and ask him, what do you need to do to get better, to get more ice time? What's the best way to go about this as a parent?
Well, Mike, if you don't mind, I'll jump on that real quick.
Hey, go ahead.
It's a multi-tiered approach, and this is when most teams have problems, right? Because a parent will have an issue, a coach will probably have no communication structure in place, and then the kid feels slighted. So this is actually where all three of the groups have to work together. And this is also why goal setting is so important. So number one, and I'm not skipping ahead of the coaching section just yet, but I'll say that all coaches, all teams should have a very clear communication structure in place, even if it's the lack of communication. So like you said, Christie, the older you get, the less this breaks down, because the older you get, you want your kids to take care of this on their own, especially in high school. Right. And in college, parents do not have a say, and that's the way
you
it should
have
be.
no say.
Right,
You
right.
don't talk to the coach.
Right. Well,
ever.
And again, to be fair, the higher the level, the more winning actually is part of the job, right?
Sure.
But at the youth levels, I think it's all about coaches having a communication plan so that if a parent feels like they need to speak to the coach, there's a clear method to do that. That takes away commiseration between parents. It takes away negative feelings, and it lets parents know there is an appropriate way to approach this. Number two, and this is both on this is on all three, the coach, parent, and player. If a player is not getting ice time, there must be a reason. Right? There must be a reason. No coach wants to deal with the parent that has a stopwatch and says, this is exactly how much ice time they get. When a coach is really trying to work with that player to improve his skill set, and a game might not be the best environment to work on that skill set all the time. I know that's tough for some parents. And the normal comeback is, well, if they don't get the ice time, they're not going to get the experience.
Exactly.
Coaches deal with a lot of things here. Okay, so again, at the atom level, at the mite level, yes, ice time is imperative at that level, and everybody really should. And for the most part, they do get equal ice time.
Equal development.
Right. And as you rise up the rank, you can see that starts to dissipate a bit, right? So a lot of it is about teaching kids to be in the right position at the right time. And like I spoke about with those life lessons, right? If you're on a bottom line and the game's on the line, this is an opportunity to learn, right? If as a parent, and this can be hard for parents, right? If your player is not the most developed player on the team, it's not so much focusing on the ice time for me as a coach. It's what can we do together, coach, parent, and player, to improve the gaps in your son or daughter's game so that they can be called upon in that moment, right? And again, look, there's always going to be an aura of unfairness here, right? And every situation's different. If we're in a peewee situation, which is right in the middle of it, right? What is that, U12? It can be really tough, because – look, the kids want to win, but everybody wants to be out there to win. It's a paradox, right? It's an impossible situation. That's why I think making sure that the lines of communication are open and making sure the development plans are there are so important so that everyone's on the same page, right?
Right. And I find it annoying, though, when I do see coaches giving in to parents. If the certain parent is constantly chirping in the ear of the coach, and the coach is like, okay, I can't take it anymore. Right. And the parent gets their way. That's upsetting for the rest of us parents.
It is.
Christie, I think a lot of this has to do, and it's really, a holistic approach of everybody working together, right? Because I think a lot of times a parent will choose a team and drive to that team and put their child on a team they know doesn't advocate equal ice time for their kids until it's not their kid. You know what I mean? So being, you've done a lot of articles and written about, doing the research and making sure that you're putting your child in the right environment that aligns with your philosophy until it doesn't, right? So I think that communication is key, that the coach has to understand too. Like me, I know as a 14U coach right now, I'm as concerned with putting certain kids on the ice to succeed as I am to make sure I don't allow them to fail. And I don't mean fail like I don't want them to fail.
Right.
But children, 14-year-old boys in particular, they can turn on their teammates quickly. Easily. And you as a coach need to be able to almost help them understand that we're growing together. We're going to be in a good environment. I'll put, I tend to roll lines with my group, but as a parent, I'd be like, well, why is he rolling the lines? He should be putting the best 5 kids out there so we can win. Well, I want to see if these 5 kids can help us win.
So,
that's important for learning environment.
Let me jump in here because this is actually a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about here, right? So the last part of the parental goal setting, and this goes perfectly into the coaching segment, is to be an asset for your team, not a hindrance. All right. And I think that's an important thing that all parents should share. I am not saying you should not speak up if you feel like something is wrong. Okay. As I'm telling you that as a coach, as a player, and as a parent, right? Every situation is different, but we should all be going into the season as parents to say, I'm going to be an asset to this team, not a hindrance. I'm not going to be that guy, that dad, that mom that everyone worries about. Okay. That's one of my goals. And again, that was
Lee, you always hear it. Right. You always hear it though, right? They're like, hey, I'm never that guy. I'm never that coach.
I'm never that guy.
I'm never that parent. Hey, coach, I've never been that parent.
Right.
But And I'm like,
Right.
I have been that parent. No, I haven't.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, and me too. I've been that parent too.
Right.
So I think it's very hard.
It's
difficult.
extremely hard. And but again, this is why it's important to set that goal before the season, because
Right.
and like I said, look, I'll give you my story. Like, I'll give you my situation here. I was not going to be in coaching it with my son in any way. I did not want to coach. Again, I've coached at a professional level. I did not want to coach my kid's might team or his added team, because I wanted him to get used to being around other coaches and other leaders and other people. Now, COVID hindered that. I had to volunteer to even be near him on the ice. And I'm enjoying it. But I want to be an asset to that coach. And like I said, I'm in a situation where I have a lot of experience. And it's funny because the coach of my son's team is always asking me questions, which is fine. But I always enable him as the head coach. So even when my son comes up to me, no, speak to the coach. Right? I want to be an asset to this human being. I don't want to be in the way. I don't want people asking me over him. I have that goal. I had that goal set in my mind. And because of that, I'm able to move forward. Now, let's switch this to the coaching situation. Anytime you talk about goal setting, and this is the question I have for the audience. I even have this question for you too, right? We're talking about goals, but are we thinking about the team? Because teams have goals as well, right? It's one thing to have individual goals, but teams have goals as well. So Mike, this is why I want to transition. And Christie, you too. When you have the player on the team, that's the bottom line player, doesn't get as much ice time, right? It's funny how much youth sports teams, it's not even just hockey, emulate offices and adults. And it's funny because adults don't think this is the same thing. I'll give you a scenario, and I always do this when I speak. If you were hired to a job and you were new and you walked in and you had no job title and no description when you walked in, you would be completely lost. You'd be guessing what to do. You wouldn't know. And you'd probably eventually be like, hey, what are we doing here? Speak up. I want to know what I'm doing. I'm not getting enough time at my job to do my work, right? So I think it's so important for coaches to set goals for the team and to give each player on the team a role. Now, this is where I'm going with it. And Christie, I definitely want your thoughts on this. Even at the Pee Wee level, this can be done. Again, the lower levels, not so much. The lower levels, I've always said, in terms of age, ice time should be spread out. That is completely experience at that point. But once you get to Pee Wee Bantam or whatever, U12, U15, it does change a little bit. All right, skills change. Kids grow at different rates. I was always the kid growing up because I was advancing every year. I was usually the worst kid on the team when I joined a team, right? The best coaches I had gave me a role. And I will always remember this. My second Pee Wee coach, my first Bantam coach, said to me, look, you are developing very well, but you're not at the point you need to be at yet. But, and I will never forget this because this had a major effect on my life. He said, you are clearly the hardest worker on the team. Okay. And he goes, that's your role. You're setting the bar for everybody else from the best player down to be the hardest worker on the team. And he says, if you keep working at the rate you're going, you'll get in the lineup more and more and more. But I need you to make sure you don't stop working hard because that sets the bar. Now, I suddenly had a role. Ice time, while I wanted it, I always wanted to be out there. I was sitting on the bench knowing I have to just work hard when I'm out there because that's what the coach wanted. And he kept his word, too. That's the other big part of this, all right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a lie, all right? I mean, and by the end of the season, I was out there all the time, right? But creating roles for your players should be a goal and explaining those roles to the players and, in some cases, their parents, whether they like it or not, all right? So, and again, this is where the goal setting can kind of, butt heads a little bit at times. But again, with the coaches, you should have goals as a staff. That's the first thing I have on my list. Get together as a staff, set goals for the season. Those goals should include, obviously, your development plan, what you want to accomplish as a coach this season, and also your communication plan. Set a communication plan with your parents, and then set a goal with your team and create that accountability. This is one of the biggest ones I do when I work with teams, and I'll stop talking in a minute, I promise, is that you want to let your players also create goals for the season. What do we think we can accomplish this year as a group, right? Let your players tell you what you can accomplish because then they have to be accountable to it. Here's a quick tip. They always want to over-accomplish. I've never had a team go, well, if we come in fifth, that'll be good, right? They always want to do better, right?
Yeah.
Let them have the accountability to have to do better so that that grows accountability throughout the whole team. So every player from the top player down to the bottom player skill-wise, all right, has a role, right? So let me toss that back out to you. Mike, I'm going to go to you first on this. And then, Christie, I want to get your thoughts as a parent on what I just said.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, if you have to also establish that roles evolve, roles change, and that your role. Like I know me, we used to laugh in high school that I never really saw a lot of goals getting scored on my line because I was always in the corner with my face buried into the glass, saying, hey, did we score back there? Because, I had a different role. I wasn't the kid putting the puck in the net. I had to but I embraced that role because my coaches gave me those, a lot of positive feedback from that. And my teammates did too, right? And I think a lot of our kids now, what I try to explain is we can't have 6 first-line centermen.
Right.
We have to have
Right.
diversity in the teams. Now, again, even at the young levels, I mean, at 8U, 10U, 12U, if you can, be an advocate and as a coach and find those little things that that certain kids are good at, you can help them embrace those plays. Like, wow, you are the best stick on puck. I know, like my son in lacrosse, his coaches love him because he's the best ground ball player they have. Now, can he score? Yeah, he's not the best defenseman, but he's a ground ball hog. But the coaches are always like, ground ball hog, ground ball hog, ground ball hog. And he embraces that. And the kids on the team say, oh, yeah, he's the guy that's got to go at the ball because he's good at that. So you can help your team grow. And then as a parent, you need to then say, yeah, that's great. And let's develop that. But let's look at developing everything else as well. And then that's where your role can come in to be an advocate for your own kids, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's good. Although I will have to tell you, I don't like when coaches lock kids into positions very early. For example, when my daughter was a very good figure skater before she started playing hockey. Well, she did both. She started at 3. And when she was on a hockey team, age 4, everybody got, obviously, to play whatever position you're learning. Right. And then when she got onto the mite level, she could skate backwards fabulously. She had beautiful crossovers. She was fast going backwards. So the coach automatically locked her into defense and said, here she is, 6 years old. You are a born defenseman. She didn't really like defense at all. She was dying to play forward, but he wouldn't let her because she was so good at skating backwards. And she was the only girl on the team.
Right.
And the other boys couldn't. So she was locked into that position. She never complained. I never said anything to the coach, although I knew that she was dying to have that position as a center, or she loves playing left wing. And he never gave her that opportunity. And that was kind of a sad year for me, but we didn't complain. She fell into the role. And at one point, he even said to her, since she was the only girl on the team, by the way, you're our enforcer. She kind of liked that.
Right.
And then fortunately the next year, the coach saw how skilled she was. She had just a great shot, and he made her a forward. Right. So she was strong on defense the first year. They're little, what are you saying, strong on defense? They're little kids, but she developed. And then the coach the next year saw her talent as a forward. But I don't like when coaches lock kids into positions when they're so young.
Yeah, but Christie, isn't that the reason why a lot, like, then that goes right back to communication and setting the standards of what your team is? Because isn't that a lot of the reasons why people leave organizations is because they feel like they're pigeonholed that, that kid's a defenseman or that kid can only play center. And then you have coaches every year go, oh yeah, that kid's just a centerman. So that goes back to understand the organization you're in, communicating the coaches communicating their expectations and roles. And at the youth level, you want your kids playing as many different positions because you don't know what they're going to become.
Right.
I mean, you look at the best players in the NHL, you ask, the large majority of them, you ask what they played and they'll say, oh, I was a defenseman up until I was 16 years old, or I was a winger until I was 18 years old. And then I got drafted and somebody else saw a talent in me that I was able to be injected in because that's a role I needed to play at that time in my life.
And right. I'll inject this too, because it's a mixed bag, right? So, and Christie, I completely understand what you're saying. And I think Mike's right about, communicate. What's funny is this, and this is the things we don't know, right? Did that season at defense actually make her a better offenseman? Right.
Maybe.
Maybe
right. It did.
Right. So it's like, and again, it's tough to quantify any of these things. I always joke at the Pee Wee Bantam level. I was like, you're all midfielders to me, right? You're all should be on both sides of the puck and really learning. And with that said, clearly there was no communication in that situation, which there should have been. A coach could have easily said, look, You're the best at skating backwards. This is the role I need you to fulfill. And we can work on some plans, maybe to get you some offense this year. But if you want to be a great member of the team this year, this is where you can support our team. And it's always, I'm going to say this, it is always good for players to play a season at every position. I'll give you a great example at the pro level that totally applies to this. And it shows you how some of these aspects are not limited to youth hockey. I was in a situation with the pro team in Europe where my offense, specifically the wingers, and the defense were kind of going at each other, where the wingers were saying, listen, just get me the puck on the breakout. It's not hard. And the defensemen were saying, well, you're not open. I can't get the puck, right? These are pro hockey players, right? So I blew a whistle, and I said, all right, wingers, go play defense. Defense, go play wing for the next few drills, right? And it was immediate. The wingers were going, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it was.
Nobody's moving.
Yeah.
Nobody's moving.
Right. The defensemen were like, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it was, right? So inadvertently, and this is where pro is really fun. Within 20 minutes, they got my message of like, stop complaining and start realizing that you need to understand these positions a little bit better. So at the highest level of hockey, and this is great for coaches. This is great for this podcast. Every player knows what every other player's responsibility is, okay? You can take most players at the NHL and move them to any position, and they will probably do okay. Sergei Fedorov is a great example of this, okay? He played offense for the Detroit Red Wings. He's a Hall of Famer, and Scotty Bowman did not like the way he was playing offense. He put him on defense for half the season. In one game, he had him play defense for 8 minutes straight to make a point, okay? So that well-roundedness is super important. But coaches, going back to the podcast, I can tell you stories all day. Coaches, are you communicating this to your players? Christie, this is a question for you. I bet you would have felt a lot better as a parent, and I bet your daughter would have felt a lot better as a player if the coach said, listen, this is why I have her here. These are the skills she will directly develop from her season at defense. I will make sure she gets to play offense at times throughout the season when appropriate. I mean, how much better would that have made you feel?
Yeah, so much better. And that's a great point, because you guys as coaches spend a lot of time on the ice, countless hours developing your players.
Right.
You also need to take time to develop us parents at least once a week.
Right.
Have a meeting with it. We like to be led. Trust me.
It's true.
No one doesn't like to be led. Be leaders and communicate to parents. Have a quick meeting with us once a week. Hey, this is where we're at with the team. Here's what we're doing with the kids. Let us clue us in as to what's going on with the team. And I think there's going to be less frustration and anxiety and fewer parents acting crazy in the stands.
I'll tell you this. I was going to say this for the end. This is a coaching tip, all right, that I've used and I've taught people, and it works very well. A lot of coaches think they don't want to do what you just said, Christy, because they don't want to deal with parents. And I think that's a mistake. I think you're absolutely right. An open dialogue with the parents is very important. Coaches, here's a tip. If you have a parent that you feel is overbearing, okay, and parents, this may be you. I'm not going to lie to you. All right. Give that parent a role. Give them a job on the team. One of two things will happen. They will dive into that role and try to be the best parent they can possibly be, or they will step away and never speak to you again because they don't want to be bothered with that role.
Which isn't such a bad thing.
No. And that's why I said it's a tip of the trade, okay? You never know. You might find an asset. Like an overbearing parent can become an asset if you
that's true.
Put them in the right position.
We forget that the parents you have, your 15, 16, 17 parents that you have on a team, all have diverse backgrounds and are good at certain things. And, you know, if you can now, you know, I used to joke, like I'd rather have when I was running like ADM, American Development Model practices, were station based and you needed, you know, 2 or 3 people out there helping you. I wanted more coaches to get certified than I needed, because the more people that are on the ice with me, seeing the way I teach and listening to my philosophy helps me reinforce what we want to do with the kids. Right. But at the same time, hey, you're a great videographer. I need to videotape all our practice games. You're great. You're great at organization. Help us get involved at doing, team functions, and you run the tournaments, you run the social functions.
Right.
I remember growing up, I grew up in Katona, New York, playing hockey, and there was every Friday night, one mother organized a wine and cheese gathering during practice.
Right.
And they just went over there.
Right.
They had no, like right now, one of the guys I work with now calls it parental entertainment, right? That the parents want to sit there on the glass watching practice and isolating every single thing that's going on. And you as a coach, you're looking at the big picture and you're trying to develop a whole system. But if nobody knows that, you're not getting any advocates at all.
Here's another great tip. Look, I have been on and coached teams where parents have a stopwatch and time their kids' ice time. And I have always gone up to that. I've gone up to that parent and I've said, "Will you do me a favor? Will you take the shots for every single player on the team and let me know where they were when they shot?" And because listen, you're doing a great job timing your kid. I really want to see you. Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing.
I love how you turn that around.
It sounds like
Give the parents a role.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm being underhanded, but actually, here's the thing. I bet you that parent will be really good at that role. And as a coach, it's very valuable to know where your kids are shooting the puck from. So, look, my point here is at the end of the day, everyone can really win here. All right. And I can tell you this, again, as a player, as a coach, the best teams I've ever been a part of, the parents have been involved and they've been good at it. You know, there's a team within the team there, right? My most fun years growing up, I knew all my teammates' parents, and they were great. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have problems or disagreements, but a team is a team is a team. So as a coach, again, bringing this back, one of your goals is to make the best possible environment for everyone, knowing you're never going to probably get 100% buy-in, but that's okay. And again, you want to track progress. I always said that too. And you want to be a teacher. That's the one more thing I wanted to say about coaching. Coaches are teachers. And I think that's undervalued by parents at times. And I think it's actually undervalued by coaches at times. You are a teacher. And as a teacher, you're not just teaching hockey, right? You're teaching life. You're teaching life skills. I cannot put the hammer down on this enough that while the game is wonderful and dreams are wonderful, and I'm not saying parents and players and coaches shouldn't have dreams, there's a higher purpose with youth sports. It's to make you a productive person. So you want to be a teacher and make sure that when your kid has a rough game or gives up the winning goal or passes the puck and turns it over on a really bad play, you reaffirm that, listen, you made a mistake. That happens. How are we going to fix that mistake, right? And parents, that's for you too. I have seen parents do horrendous things to their kids when they've made mistakes. And that's not, I'm going to be honest, and again, I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm lecturing. That's not the right message. You can be disappointed in a play your kid made, but what are you teaching them? That you should
but I think
failure, you can't fear failure in hockey. The whole game is based off of capitalizing on other people's misfortune.
That's how you learn.
Right.
I think for overall, a lot of us that are volunteer coaches, this is hockey, but this is soccer, this is lacrosse, this is baseball. The people that volunteer their time for coaches, the majority, I don't know if they are as much teachers as they are managers. I think they're teachers, but to find that mom or dad that loves to talk about nutrition, finding somebody that loves to talk about a mental preparation, finding those pieces that can help you, and then you manage that team like you were a college team, because like you were a pro team, because you have all those resources. When you send your kid to school, to college or prep school, you're putting them in an environment that environment has all those pieces connected to it. And at the youth level, at 10-year-old and 12-year-olds, we just don't have those resources, but we do have parents that, to your point, Lee, say, I hear you, I hear you're great at, I see you running all the time and you're in great shape, and your kid always has a shake, after practice, and has great, I never see him eat McDonald's. Can you speak to our kids about this? And can you help educate the parents about this? And then it gives then I truly do become a teacher, because now I can help reinforce those things. But at the youth level,
and even, that's
use those parents.
Right. And even connections that parents have in the community. We had one parent who had a printing shop, and that parent printed out all the little contact cards for all the parents, made banners for our teams, made the door hangers for the hotel rooms. Another parent was a manager at a grocery store and was able to get us all these great paper products for the rest of the year, for our tournaments and for our team dinners. And another parent wanted to advertise on at the rink, so they bought one of the boards at the rink, and we got all our uniforms paid for.
There you go.
So you should definitely seek out the resources that are right there within your own circle.
That goes right in line to team culture, right? They're building that team culture. They're building that fact that we're all working together. Because, and I say it to my parents all the time, as a coach of a child on the team, and my kid's on my team. I said, I want my son to have the best experience he's ever had in youth sports. And guess what? You're all going to benefit from that. because I'm going to make sure that what I would do for him, I'm doing for all 17 of you, and we're all going to get involved with it. And I think the more you can help me, the more we're helping your kid as well.
This is
Right. So that should be one of your goals as a parent. You know, what talent do I have? What connections do I have that can help make this hockey
Be proactive.
season?
Yeah, go out and tell the coach, I can do this.
Oh, they'll take it too. Yeah, the coach will. Most coaches will take you up on that.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, and this is great because I should tease here too to the listening audience. We are absolutely going to have an episode on team culture in a few weeks, which I'm excited about as well. We plan ahead here at Our Kids Play Hockey, and you know, with the goal setting, you know, doesn't I'll kind of ask you guys this before we jump into the final segment here. Doesn't this speak to the higher purpose of creating communities, which is something that we just desperately need right now all over the country, is just creating conducive communities where people work together and feel good about working together? Doesn't that speak to that? It's not just limited to hockey, is it?
Right. We need to be in communities where we care about each other.
Yes.
Right.
And hockey is
sometimes you're not feeling the love these days.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. It can affect your team. Go ahead, Mike.
No doubt. And I think, unfortunately, that where hockey is faltering, in my opinion, is that when you look for select teams and you look outside your community, people aren't meeting up in school. These kids don't play soccer and lacrosse together. You might see kids in your locker room that, the practice goes to 6 to 7, and at 7, you'll never see that family again until next Thursday.
Yeah. And
I just think that's so, for the most part, I know there's a lot of communities around the United States that actually do work in a community environment, and it's not as many people coming from outside that environment. But to your point, Lee, it's so important for us. Like me, if I had my way, I would say, listen, you're going to pick that 10U team. You have to be with those families for 4 years.
Right.
Like that's your group to be with, and you need to grow and mentor them and develop them. But we're in these little 6-month cycles where do you really get a chance to impact a kid's life as much as you could if you're the right person with the right culture before they just move on to another group. And so in that small time we have together, let's do the best we can to make sure that we're in a community feel, but also juggle the fact that every year we want our kids coming back the next year to play hockey.
That's a great goal for a coach. It's a great goal for a parent, and it's a great goal for a player. And again, they'll just transition here to the last segment. The last segment is setting realistic goals as a player. And I'll say this, parents and coaches, the reason why I put this last is because this is something you probably want to help your child with. Because look, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, they're not experts at making goals most of the time, right? Maybe a little bit older, they might get to that point, but help your child set a destination, right? Both long-term and short-term. If your kid says, I want to play in the NHL, that's not a bad destination. Look, here's the thing. And this is what I was told. As a parent, you don't have to support your kid's dream, but you have to support their right to have a dream. All right. I've heard kids say to their parents, I want to play in the NHL. And their parents say, well, you'll never make that. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? All right. So yes, it's highly unlikely your kid will make the NHL. I can tell you that. That doesn't mean you squander their dreams of making the NHL. Because I'll tell you this right now, 100% of players in the NHL had the dream of playing in the NHL. Not one of them made it without that dream. Okay. So support the right to have a dream and then say, okay, cool. That's a pretty big goal. All right. What are the steps that we need to take to get you to that destination? Right. That's
exactly what we did. Sophia had a dream of, she of course wants to go to college, and Mom, I would love to be able to play college hockey. So what do we need to do to get you there?
Right.
So we did all the steps. We did the showcases, put it on a high-level team, a AAA team. We traveled to colleges, met with coaches. It was a lot of hard work and dedication and sacrifice, and it was expensive.
Right.
But we budgeted for that. We planned way ahead of time, saying, okay, this is your goal. Let's set that aside. We're going to set aside the money. We're going to set aside the time. We're going to make it happen. And we're going to do our very best to make this happen for you. What is it that we need to do? We contact a lot of other college hockey players and coaches, and we found out she took all the steps and she made it happen. But it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, but Christie, don't you think though too, as a parent, there were certain times where you had to remind your daughter that these are your goals and that, there's going to be sacrifices, and sometimes it's you know, you have a goal,
Right.
but sometimes you got to say, you know, and not to be an overbearing parent, but you're the adult, and be like, listen, remember we all discussed this, that we're going to do this. Well, right now you really haven't done this, and this. So is that goal now changing? And I think having those conversations are healthy, because, you know, children, just like all of us, you know, can get off and veer off on a path that they don't even know they're going, even if they're, you know, the type of kids they're hanging out with in school, the type of other friends they have outside of hockey. I know one of the reasons we chose a certain program that my son's in is because we felt like the kids in that program had like-minded goals and expectations, as opposed to being with a group that some of the kids are like, well, it's
just
fun,
yeah.
but, and again, I want to have fun, but I'm not really going to dedicate myself to making sure that I'm doing these other steps to keep advancing. And sometimes
that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I support parents who just want to do this recreationally and nothing more than that, other than just have a great experience. And that's terrific. But there are two things I want parents to remember. That when you're enjoying this journey, remember, you are going to develop a relationship with your child that you never even thought was possible. And you're also developing a support system that you never thought was possible. Hockey parents are amazing in all aspects of your life. So there's two really good goals for you to remember as you're taking this hockey journey.
You know, I'll tell you, I love telling stories. You know this. You know, I was very blessed to be able to play hockey my entire life. All right. And I'll tell you this. I remember a few games here. I remember a few big plays, teammates. You know, I remember being in the locker room with my friends. You know what I really remember? I remember being in the car with my dad and having talks with my dad on the way to the rink, and the life lessons that I was taught, both to and from the rink. I remember being devastated after not making a team or losing a game. And I remember those conversations. They were very impactful to me in my life because, again, they had a higher impact, right? Learning how to deal with adversity or learning how to get that big moment. You know, you really got the big goal today because of this. You should remember that. You know, remember, destinations, goals can change, right? So that's why I say when a kid says, I want to play in the NHL, play college hockey, whatever it is, help them find those goals that get them to that destination, right? What do you need to do along the way? And Mike, you alluded to this perfectly. Another story, I remember this, you know, I told my dad I want to play hockey at a big level. And, you know, I was a teenager, and he used to tell me, okay, if you want to play, you got to go outside. You got to take 500 shots a day in the garage, right? I had a piece of sheet metal. I used to shoot off that. And he would tell me this. I remember when I was younger, every day, hey, Lee, it's time to go outside and take your shots. Now, when I became a, you know, teenager, sometimes I pushed back a little bit. As a teenager, it's what teenagers do. And I'll never forget this day. He stopped telling me to do it. And a couple of days went by, and I said, hey, why don't you tell me to practice anymore? Right? Because I actually, you know, at that age, I didn't know it, but I wanted him to do that. It was, you know, a lot of psychology behind that. And he said this to me, and I'll never forget this. He says, if you really want to accomplish your goal, I won't have to tell you to practice. All right? You'll just do it. And again, I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. Man, did that hit me between the eyes. I never missed a day after that, ever. And I never asked him again to tell me to practice. Right? That was the impact of my father. And again, my mother had, just not to leave her out, amazing impact on my life in many ways as well. All right.
Right.
I don't want to leave my mother out of this conversation. All right. My parents created me into the person that I am, and the experiences that I had in hockey are why I have hockey businesses and why I'm a coach, why I'm a team builder, why I'm on this podcast right now, because I'm dedicated to everything that I got into giving it back. So find and create the steps to help your kids get there. All right. Don't underestimate that. I think we shy away as parents sometimes. And actually, Christie, to go back to the book, there's a great couple sentences in here about, are you watching the game and watching your kid, or are you on your cell phone, right? Do you pay more attention to when your phone buzzes or the whistle blows?
Then the whistle blows.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought that was really brilliant. All right.
Yeah.
Because look, there's a lot of distractions today, friends. A lot.
Yeah.
You know, don't be distracted from your kids. That's your time with them, and it means a lot.
Right.
Go ahead, Christie. I'm sorry.
I hate seeing, and I see it so often, not so much at the college level because all the parents are just glued to everything on the ice. They're totally into it. But parents scrolling, reading, talking to each other, not paying attention and all of what the kids are doing. And I can just remember this one moment where this teammate was just dying for her mom's attention. You could tell she was out there just working her butt off because she wanted her mom to get off her phone and pay attention to her. And she scored her first goal of the season, and mom missed it because mom was doing this. And I turned to her and I said, your daughter just scored the game-winning goal. Oh, did you get it on video?
Oh,
Yeah, I did.
Well, I have live
I
bars,
did.
so I'll go back and watch.
right. Well, we do
Yeah,
now.
we have live bars.
Let me comment on
How
that.
sad.
Right. This
Stop
is what I'll
doing
say.
that.
Because I actually want to empathize a little bit on both sides here, but this is how I say it, right? I understand as a parent, especially of two young kids, in today's world, I understand the need for escapism. I really, really do. Let your children be that escape when you're at the rink. Don't let it be your phone or social media. Because listen, you're inadvertently telling your kid, and I gotta say it like this. I don't want any of you listening to think I don't think you don't. I know you care about your kids. I know you love your kids. But you have to look at it through the eyes of a child. You're telling them what I'm looking at on my phone is more important than you. You might not think that way, and I know you love your kids, but your kid sees that, and Christie just affirmed that, right? What's on your phone is not more important than them, and you have to make sure they know that. You have to make sure they know that. So again, look, I understand the need right now to just, it's
Right, but Lee, where's the line? Is the line
Right.
okay? I'm not on my phone, but I'm on top of the glass, screaming over at my kids.
Right,
right.
That's fair too.
There's a
Yeah.
lot, like in a lot of ways for me. Yeah, like what's that? What do they say now? Right, like when the NHL guys are playing, no fans.
Yeah,
how
no
they gonna
fans. How are they going to know when to shoot? Right.
I love that.
Shoot the puck. But Mike, it's a
But I
great
think
question.
it's just the way I look at it is that there is where the line is. There's where like I knew my father was always watching me, but he was
Right.
in the corner, never part of the group, never yelling at the officials, never rolling his eyes at something I did, just watching.
Right.
And that was a comfort that,
Massive.
I didn't, and I never felt like, oh, I disappointed him or he's way over the top. Like and that's a really hard thing for any of us as parents to do.
But again, the key is that you said that you knew he was watching. I knew my parents were watching, and that was as a comfort. As an adult, I underestimated as a child. Like you don't realize it as a kid, but the comfort of knowing, hey, my dad, my mom are here, and I know they're watching me. And then here's another thing, Christie, for you, to not have to look over my shoulder to see if my dad is watching. It's incredibly distracting. All right.
Yeah.
And this again, this goes out with everything, right? Mike, to your point, don't be overbearing, have a role. Coaches, give your parents a role, help them be better parents for their kids. And there's nothing wrong in saying that. We all want to be better parents for our kids. Parents, make sure your kid knows you're there mentally, physically. All right. That you're there for them, not just to yell at them. Right. And again, this brings us actually to our last section, which is perfect, which is tips and tactics to accomplish your goals as a parent, as a coach, as a player. And I got a few ones I'm going to run through real quickly. But I want to say before I get into them is that this is something that you can do at any level. If a coach is not doing with your players, parents, you can do this with your kids individually. Kids, if you're listening to this show, if your parents or your coaches aren't doing it, you can do this. There's no place where these don't work, right? One of them I have is journals. We do this as coaches. All the best coaches I've ever worked with have a journal in some form. They're writing during the game. They're writing notes. They refer back to them. And there's multiple types of journals. There's just journals to track your progress, what you did in a certain game as a player, as a coach, as a parent. There's also things called gratitude journals, which I recommend to every team that I work with. Your players should have a journal in which they write down what they're grateful for every game, right? And what they learned, what they failed at. You want to teach your kid not to fail, you have to rid them of the fear of failing because it's inevitable to fail. I always ask my kids before they go to bed, what'd you fail at today? Because I don't want them to fear failing, right? And they have a hard time with that, to be fair. But when they're older, they're going to be able to do that. So that's one is journaling, right? 2, tracking visually progress. This is something teams don't do enough, right? You should have good messages in your locker room or somewhere on your phone, on your wallpaper, in your kid's bedroom, tracking goals that you've set. One of the things that I've done with my teams, and this is both actually on the ice and off the ice, is there's so many online digital ways to track progress now. The problem I have with a lot of those, and they're good, is that you don't see it all the time. You have to access it. At my company and with my teams, I always have a huge whiteboard or some sort of tracking device where they can go up to it and look at what everyone else is doing and seeing where the tracking is, what they're working on as a team, as a defensive core, as an offensive core. I want everyone to be able to see it, and I want it in their face all the time, just to remind them that we're trying to accomplish these goals. And then my last tactic before I jump to you two is be flexible. Goals change. You have to be willing to be flexible. You don't want to set a kid up for failure if he's not or she's not going to reach the goal. Help them create new goals in order to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to get to. And this goes back to everything from your daughter playing defense, Christy, and making sure that she understands this is the goal, this is why we're doing that, all the way to the top levels, understanding point production, right? I have seen, and this is something I definitely wanted to say in this podcast, I have seen parents pay their kids to score goals. And I think that is crazy. It is crazy thinking. Not only is your kid going to be a horrible teammate, right? But you are teaching them that something that does not apply, right? This is what's funny about it. I've told parents, if you feel the need that you want to incentivize goal scoring, do me a favor, incentivize assists too. All right? Point production, not just goals. Assists are worth as much as goals for a reason, right? And make your kid a better teammate, right? Now, again, I don't recommend paying kids, especially at the youth level, to do anything. But that's not conducive to making your kid a better person or a better player. It's conducive to making them a selfish player. All right. And you can justify that in your head however you want. I'm telling you as a coach, that's what it does. But anyway, coming back to this again, visual tracking, journals, be flexible. Christy, I'll jump with you. You know, what did you do with your daughter to help track progress? And what other tips and tactics do you have?
Organization is really important before you start the season. All right. So I have all these organizational tricks just to make sure that I'm where I need to be, when I need to be. And one is very old fashioned. It's a dry erase board, as you alluded to, which we have in the kitchen. And we put it right there and we put everything there. So we know, you know, school plays, concerts, what time practice is, are there any conflicts? I love the visual, and it's right central where everybody can see it. So as the kids start making plans, they know exactly what commitments we already have before you commit to something else. So something very simple like that. I know it's not, you know, a goal, so to speak, but organization is a key goal in making a successful season. I also, for technology, I love apps. They're great to communicate with your team. There's some really good ones out there. So if you ever need any help getting a kid to a game, or if you can't make it, it's really easy to jump on that and communicate with other parents. Let them know even about traffic delays. If you're like an hour ahead and you know that there's some traffic situations, you can let the other team members know, don't go this route. Communicating, making sure you're communicating with the coaches, have everybody's cell phone numbers. That's also really important because there may be a situation where, you know, your kid can't make the game. All of a sudden they're sick. They have flu-like symptoms. They might have COVID. You need to get that message to everybody. So make sure you have everybody's cell phone numbers so you're all communicating.
When I was a kid, we had phone chains. We don't have to do that anymore. You had phone chains, and one parent would call the next parent. You can text everyone in 1 second now. Also, I always adopt the 24-hour rule. We haven't talked about that, but that's a really important goal to have. And parents, if you're new to hockey, you don't know what that is breathing room. Hockey can be a very emotional game, and you can get caught up in the heat of a moment during a game, and you're angry, you're frustrated, you want to lash out at the coach or other kids, or you don't understand why parents are behaving that way. 24 hours, just let it go. And then after 24 hours, you address it with the coach. Just a cooling off, cooling down period. Christy, I do want to say,
really important
to support you there. That rule goes both ways. All right. And that's something that's not talked about. That in my teams, the 24-hour rule goes both ways. If I'm a coach and I'm mad at a parent or a player, I wait 24 hours before I speak to them too. It's a two-way rule. I don't think enough coaches apply that. All right. And again, I'm not talking about in the game when a kid makes a mistake, not coaching that kid. I'm saying if something happens and you need to speak to a parent, it's the same rule. You show them the same respect. They're going to share it with you. So 24 hours for parents to coaches and 24 hours for coaches to parents. I think that's a mutual respect. And I can tell you this, I have almost never, probably never made a good decision when I'm overly emotional, whether angry or excited, right? On either side of the emotional gamut. I rarely make good decisions when I have too much emotion in either way, because your brain's not working right. This is why people will use millions of dollars at the slots machines. I won.
Yeah.
Stop.
Hey, look I'm Italian. you know? That's enough said.
Right. Right.
I'll be
Mike,
throwing a shoe at you in 30
right.
seconds, you know?
Right.
Um, so so there are little things that you can do to adopt along the way to make your season more enjoyable, less stressful, less anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety out there. Parents, we know that, we get that, but there are things you can do. Yeah,
right.
there are
Just
things you can do.
2020
And before we go, I do want to share, and I know you're going to wrap up here too, Mike. So we want you to pipe in. I do have some pledges that I gathered from parents all over the country on how to make the season better and what they pledge to do. So I'll save that for last. So Mike, jump in.
Yeah,
Share
well, that's
tricks.
great. I can't. Yeah, no, I think it's, as a coach, one of the things I've gotten the habit of doing basically the last 3 years, is because a lot of us don't have the time to have all these parent meetings all the time. So I send out a guide to Mike Benelli's hockey team. It's a parent's guide, and it's like 16 pages long, but it lists a lot of things: the 24-hour rule, the fact that I'm not going to contact you, that I'm going to use a communication tool every week. Where I used to do the same thing, Lee, when the kids used to come into my prep school practices and college practices. I'd have like a quote of the week under the lesson plan, or a quote of the day, and then I would ask the kids on the ice, and we'd have I'd say, hey, what do you think about that quote? And the kid is like, what are you talking about, coach? Like, then I knew that kid wasn't, probably engaged and hadn't really been prepared. But at the same time, I was able to set the tone for the kids a lot of ways too. I do the same thing on the bench. I have, I would tell, and we could actually probably post this on one of our sites. I use a lineup card for every game with the kids, who's playing with who, what the lines are, who the goalies are. And I actually mark down, like, I'm very conscious, not that I believe in equal ice time that's not earned, but I want to know, okay, there's a time in the game when I need to go back and have this discussion. I can't remember that after a game.
No,
I have to write it down. It's right on my sheet. I'm marking down, certain aspects of the game where I want to remember to go see that player and have that conversation about something. Because in the heat of the moment in the game, I don't know if the kids are actually going to respond to it anyway. I don't know if they could, we all like, oh, okay, here's a play we're going to do. If you haven't worked on that for weeks and weeks and weeks, it's very rarely going to be successful. And I think, but overall, obviously the communication's a big theme, but knowing how to communicate. I do a lot of digital communication. I send our kids weekly grades and feedback. That's and awesome. How I'm feeling about them. I know mom and dad are reading it. It's not that I don't want them reading it, because I want them reading what those comments are, so they know what my feelings are back to their kids, that this is what I feel. And I guess the way I look at this too, which sometimes rubs people the wrong way, is it doesn't really matter what you think that I think. I'm tasked at coaching the team. So ultimately I have to make the decision. So yes, I understand that you might disagree with me and we can have the discussion, but ultimately I have to make the decision based off of no coach wants to lose, and no coach wants to send a message, that they don't want their kids developing. It just doesn't happen. It just really, even coaches that have kids that play, they want to win, and they want their team to get better and develop. And I think if parents went into that knowing that ultimately the coach wants to do what's best for their children, all the kids, I think it also helps alleviate a lot of the anxiety that you have going into a season as well.
Right. And I'll say this, and Christie, I actually want you to have the last word today with what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'll say this, Mike, just rounding out my section with this, is that it's so important as a coach and as a player and as a parent that you understand that we all have this destination. We have this goal we want to hit, and we might have different ways of getting there, but we're all going towards the same place. That's an important realization that should alleviate a lot of stress for people. You're allowed to disagree. You're going to disagree. It's 100%. But as long as you all know you're going to the same place, it's when you're not going to the same place that it becomes a problem. And, one final tip I want to give to everybody, and this is specifically to the coaches and parents, but kids too. Take the time to sit down with your kids and have them write out their goals, even if they're fighting you a little bit. It's such an important thing to do, to sit down and set up the goals and make sure that you know what you're striving for. And it can be a 1-year period. It could be a 5-year period. I got into this habit as a young kid, setting my 5-year goals. And I'll tell you what, I've accomplished everything I ever put down. Had I not put them down, I don't think I would have done them. And there is a lot of statistics, a lot that show that people who write their goals down, even kids, have a much higher chance of accomplishing them. It's a well-known thing. So I know for parents, sometimes it can be like, oh, I don't want to do that. They're going to fight me. Take the 10 minutes. Just see what happens. Do it yearly. Sit down. Set goals with your kids. It is such an important process. I've had coaches that have done that with me. It was a massive part to my development. This is what we're going to work on today in practice, all the way to this is what we need to do so you can accomplish these goals 5 years from now. Goal setting is so, so important to the development of a human being, not just a hockey player. So with that, I'm gonna switch it to you, Christie, because I want you to have the last word on the episode today with this before we go to the official close.
Yeah, we're all guilty of little vices out there in hockey, vilifying refs, car coaching and all that. So I reached out to hockey parents all over the country and I asked them, if you were to make a pledge to make this season better, what would your pledge be? What do you promise to do to be a better hockey parent? And I got some amazing responses. I want to share a few of them with you. So this mom from Minnesota says, I pledge to give my kids plenty of time to get their gear on. I will not rush them. Good pledge. I love this comment from Stephanie from Syracuse. Always remember our children's coach volunteers his time or her time. Keep that in mind before you say anything. Good point. No more car coaching after a game. That's a whole other topic, guys.
Right.
To bond more with families and parents on the team. I pledge to focus on skill development rather than the wins and losses. He's from Manchester. From New Hartford, to be more involved, do more for the team. We talked a lot about that. Here's one from Concord, Massachusetts. Be careful with constructive criticism, in quotes, after a game. Trust that my child tried hard and did the best he or she could.
It can be destructive criticism if you're not careful. I always say that to parents.
Here's another. We talked a little bit about this. Savor every moment. Try not to cry when my son plays his last year of hockey. Embrace my daughter's goalie eccentricities and position reputation of being just a little left of center. There's one for all the goalie parents out there. Bring more snacks. Take more pictures, cheer louder, smile more. And to try not jump out of my seat every time he takes a hit. Here's one from Washington, D.C. I love this one. Keep my mouth shut.
Hard.
There's multiple levels on that.
Right.
And another mom says, to try and stay positive in my cheering. Try not to roll my eyes at the parents who have no clue about the game. To please keep my mama bear instincts hidden deep down when people are yelling at my kid. And she's from Meade, Washington. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah. I'd follow that up with this to the people listening. How many of you have actually taken the time to do something like that? Just write a pledge. If you don't
write
want
a pledge
list, right? How much of you have taken that? I'm sure most of you say, well, I know what it is. That's great. Write it down. Take a real moment of reflection and write it down. Life's busy. As Christie, as you say in the book, great quote from Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast. If you don't slow down every once in a while, it might pass you by.
Right? I had a parent 2 years ago, his wife had a sticky note that after hockey games she would stick it on the rearview mirror that said "shut up." and literally, he said to me, "Get in the car, keep his bag in the back." She'd stick the sticker on the rearview mirror, and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe it."
Yeah,
that's great.
You need that reminder, and
right.
I think it's just
listen. We all went through this. No kid wants to be asked when they get home from school, "Hey, how was school today?" And we all do that. It's like that's not.
Hey, how do you think I feel?
You know?
How do you think I feel? I'm the coach of a son that is berating me on the way home. It's like.
Well, you need to put a little sticky note on the back seat. It says, "Shut up."
Shut up.
Leave the coach alone.
Leave the coach alone for a few minutes. No, this has been a great episode, guys.
Sure.
You listening, obviously, want to remind you that we have a lot more episodes. We have a lot more coming, but you can find all our episodes on ourkidsplayhockey.com, or you can listen basically wherever podcasts are listened to, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you want to listen to it. Also on YouTube or on Facebook, look for our group, Our Kids Play Hockey. There's no place you can't go where you can't find us. We want you to join in the conversation with us. We are just three parents, three coaches, three kids at heart And it's all about the community, though, just like we said in this episode. So make sure to take a look for us once again. It's ourkidsplayhockey.com. I'm Lee Elias with Christie Casciano-Burns and Mike Benelli. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next week. Have a good day.